Senator Young calls. Motion? I don't think so, Senator Young. 60. Oh, 60. I am sorry. Cause amendment number 60. Clerk will read.
Madam President, Senate Bill 1 be amended.
Senator Young to present the motion to amend.
Madam President, if it might be all right. I called the wrong one accidentally. I actually would like to have...
Do you want to recall your amendment number 60?
Yeah, I'll recall that one and call...
Is there consent to recall amendment number 60? Consent. All right.
Madam President,
Senator Young calls amendment number 58. Clerk will read.
Madam President, Senate Bill 1.
Senator Young to present the motion to amend.
Madam President, members of the Senate, I've never had a motion this high in the numerical order before, so I got mixed up on the numbers. I sure hope that Senator Taylor is correct that when a Republican member brings an amendment to the floor today, it's going to pass. So I hope he's right. We'll find out in a moment. Let me just preface this before I just simply explain this simple amendment. 246 years ago, there were some very courageous individuals who signed a document that was, in essence, their death warrant. They put their lives on the line for what they believed to be true and important, and that they may give their lives for what they believed in. Several of those founders who signed that document did lose their lives, but they were prepared and willing to do it. Throughout the course of our history, men and women, white and black, and other denominations as well, put their lives on the line freely. Sometimes it wasn't, but for the most time, when they served our country, they did so freely. They made a decision that they would give up their lives for things that they believed in. They had the courage to do what was right and do everything they can, even including giving up their life. We've had people in our history who believed that we should have equal rights for all of our citizens. They had the courage to do what they think was right, and they gave up their lives. But on this issue, we're going to take some lives of people who never had the opportunity to freely make that choice. They never got to say a word. And I think my job, our job, because I believe they're human beings, that we have the opportunity and the responsibility to protect those people who cannot talk to us. That's our job. I know I've heard this story. 2 lines was this. Ronald Reagan said the only people he knew that was for abortion had already been born. And there was a little girl I heard the other day, her story. The doctor botched her abortion, and she survived. And her quote that I never will forget was simply this: "What did I do that was wrong? Why did they want to take my life?" And that's all my amendment's about. For people who never had the opportunity freely to give up their lives, who never had the opportunity to say anything about this issue, they can't do anything about it. But we can. We can stand up for them, and we can speak the words that we can't hear from them. This amendment is just purely simple. We're going to remove, in this amendment, the exceptions for rape and incest. And the reason is exceptions equal death. Exceptions equal death. We also have one provision in here that clarifies that the physician determines based on reasonable medical judgment that the abortion is necessary to save the life of the pregnant woman. It's not quite right in Senate Bill 1. Whatever we do, I want to make sure it is right and we do it the right thing. And so that is my amendment, and I would appreciate your support.
Is there discussion on the amendment? Senator Cordero? Senator Cordero has questioned the author. Senator Young, will you yield?
Yes, I yield, Mr. President.
I'll do it nicely. Can you help me, Senator Young, thank you for answering my questions. The 10-year-old girl that was raped, can you explain to me what benefit she would gain? Because I remember there's the gentleman by the name Jim Bob who said that I hope that she one day would understand the benefit of what she went through, and I'm paraphrasing. So by removing the exception for rape, can you tell me a 10-year-old that her body is not even developed? By law, she cannot have a job. She's still in elementary school. By removing this exception, can you tell me that how would that deal with that 10-year-old girl?
Well, as I said, when we have exceptions, that equals death. And my opinion is this: within the things that I believe in personally, I believe that when in our law today, under 16, an individual cannot give consent for a sexual act. You just can't do it. And we define it by definition, that they're not of the age to be able to give consent. I'm going to agree, and I do have some thoughts on this issue, that I'm going to try to get an amendment somewhere in the process, either over to the House or if it goes to conference committee, because I agree with you in your premise of your question. I believe that females under the age of 16, and because of their bodies and not being fully developed, I think by definition, their life is in danger. And I believe by definition that they're more likely to have a major bodily function permanently impaired, especially their reproductive organs. I think this is a matter, when you're under 16, is really a defense to the person. They have the right to defend their life. They have the right to defend how their body operates for those girls under 16. I agree. They're not in the same position as a more mature woman. And if I could have done this today and get this done, I would have offered that amendment. But I can tell you this process is not going to go away for another week and a half. And I'm going to do everything in my power within that week and a half to get that for those young girls, because I believe it's the right thing.
Thank you for your answer, Senator Young. Are you aware of the Child Advocacy Center in Marion County?
The what?
The Child Advocacy Center in Marion County.
No, I'm not.
It's a division within the Marion County Prosecutor's Office. Do you know what that division does?
No, I don't.
They have forensics interviewers who interview children between the ages of 2 to 16. Do you know what they interview them for?
I would imagine for a crime.
You're absolutely right. So over 90% of these young kids are either sexually harassed, molested, or assaulted. When a 2-year-old walks into that office, they might not be pregnant, because we understand human anatomy. A 2-year-old cannot get pregnant. But when a 2-year-old was raped by biological parents, I know that this law, we're talking specifically about exceptions, about pregnancy related. These children between the ages of 2 and 16 cannot even comprehend. They have to teach the forensic scientists certain language as simple as teaching them and asking questions about good touches and bad touches and where were you touched, and drawing figures for them to point at what happened to them. There were girls that got pregnant by uncles and biological parents here in Marion County. And if this law passes, you're saying that you would provide criminal defense for that 10-year-old or that 9-year-old or that 11-year-old to go after her physician, maybe? If you remove all of these exceptions and you only keep it for the life of the mother, what happens to her rights as a young baby, as a teenager who was raped, who is pregnant, under your amendment?
She has the right under the law, and with Senator Freeman's amendment we just passed, we're going to be able to guarantee that we have a prosecutor who will charge those crimes and go after those people that physically or mentally injured that young girl. because we're not going to give a defense to the doctor, so it can't happen. So with his amendment, they're going to go after those people who harm those
So they
little
can't
children.
criminalize the physician and go after the physician, correct?
I would say with Senator Freeman's amendment, we're going to ensure that that person's going to be prosecuted for that
Final
crime.
question. You used the term, I believe. So are you able to share with us that belief that takes out the exception for rape or incest that is not in your amendment, you're keeping it to the life of the mother, is that informed by science or by public policy, or what informs that belief?
Well, I think part of it's done by science. If you're talking about the young lady under 16, I think the science is very clear. Representative Pryor over in the House the other day had a study that indicated that for minority kids under 16, compared to other classes, are more likely to die and more likely to have a major body function permanently impaired.
So
that is
you think it's scientific and it's medical, correct?
Right.
So we can ignore all of what we heard in testimony from the OBGYNs, from all these Indiana Medical Association, from all of these professionals in the field that said we need these exceptions and we need to keep some more reproductive rights, especially for these people who are minors and so on. So if you're saying science and medicine, can you point me out to which science and medicine that you're looking at that informs the design of an amendment that takes out the exception for rape?
Well, I think based on your testimony, the research I've done and the OBGYNs that we've spoken with, I think they've made my mind pretty clear that if you're under 16, you're going to have these issues. And I want to make sure that that doesn't happen to these little girls. And I'm going to do everything I can to protect them that's under 16.
I promise my last question. So you mentioned that you were going to try to get another amendment through this process before the end of the week and a half. Can you elaborate a little bit more? How is this amendment that takes out the exception for rape is going to work based on Senate Bill 1 drafting today versus the amendment that maybe or maybe not, I don't know the chances of that second amendment to pass. Can you help us understand the interaction between these two amendments and the actual impact of creating that exception, taking the exceptions away for rape and incest?
I'm not quite clear, obviously, as what you're getting to in your question, but if rape and incest is taken out, they can't have an abortion for rape or incest. And that's my explanation for it.
Does your amendment create any religious exemptions for communities of faith that believe that maybe abortion, such as we received, I think many of us, a statement from the JCRC suggesting that in the Jewish faith, for example, that birth or life begins at birth. How does that play under your amendment?
Well, I don't have it in it, but I know many on the other side don't want us to use our religious values,
Right.
and I was trying to respect that.
Correct, because I thought in the bill it said that there are some religious exemptions for contraceptive. So how is it that you can allow that and include it in the bill, but not include some of these exemptions for those who seek reproductive rights?
Well, that's not my bill. I probably wouldn't have done it.
I will leave it to
But I
Senator
didn't have an
Maybe.
amendment for
Appreciate
that.
it.
Yeah,
Thank you,
okay.
Madam President. May I speak on the amendment?
Senator Goodhor is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you. I respect the sanctity of life. And I know that we have an interest in protecting both the unborn and the born. But the debate here is not about that. The debate is, and for those of you who have daughters, I have 2 daughters. We don't have to be decent human beings to have daughters. We don't have to be decent human beings to defend the rights of women and girls. But if I recall correctly, last session this year, I think there was so much talk about the integrity of women and girls. You remember that discussion? The integrity of girls. Do you know how much that was recited in this chamber? How many times? Tens of times. When do we choose the integrity of a girl when it applies to public policy and our laws? When the public questions what is the motive, I will never question the motives of my colleagues. But when the public questions in a pluralistic society, if one faith can push their agenda on another faith, I don't think in a pluralistic society we took an oath under the Constitution of the United States that we cannot advance the interests of a faith or oppress faith. So when words such as I believe that is not backed by science, medicine, public policy research, the testimony of experts that said that a 10-year-old can be raped. And there's a benefit for her, but she doesn't understand that benefit. Reminds me of a great Republican that I respected, that lost public office here in Indiana, who never dared to even go that far to talk about these types of issues. May he rest in peace. Senator Lugar was defeated in his race because his opponent said that God wanted this to happen. I don't think that any God of any faith or non-faith is pro-rape. This is a very difficult discussion for us to have. But I think this is an extreme. At my desk, in my office, and I'm pretty sure that you got hundreds, if not thousands of letters. I have a stack of letters, and I'll be more than happy to share with you privately to respect those who said, do not share it publicly. A letter that begins with, I'm Catholic, I voted Republican my entire life, but this is an extreme policy. Or, I'm a Republican, and my parents were elected Republicans in the state of Indiana, and I had an abortion. I have those letters on my desk. I think we lost something in this debate. I can't morally reconcile the policy arguments of, let's protect life, but it's okay if you're raped, you need to keep that baby. I'm not advocating for anything here, I'm just pointing out the contradiction in the values that we're promoting. I think this is super extreme. Republicans in the state of Indiana, not Democrats, not socialists. Matter of fact, not only Republicans. I was contacted today by a couple of individuals from the Libertarian Party in Indiana, in Hamilton County, who said, we do agree with you, this is government overreach. My friends, please, think about the public policy implications. To conclude, last time I checked the history of our nation, I thought that what the idea of the United States was that there were people who were religiously persecuted and came to this nation to pursue freedom and liberty for every human being. Last time I checked when the Puritans came to the United States and created that shiny, beautiful, city on the hill, that everyone was entitled to their beliefs. So how in a pluralistic society can we advance an idea that someone believes that if a girl gets raped, she does not have an exception? I think this is an extreme position that I ask you to reject.
Is there further discussion? Senator J.D. Ford. Senator J.D. Ford to question. Senator Young, do you yield? Senator J.D. Ford.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. Thank you, Senator Young, for yielding. My first question, have you ever experienced a traumatic event in your life?
Yeah, my mom died, my dad died, my brother died, my sister died. I have a brother right now I probably should be with because he's dying. I chose to be here because of the importance. And so, yes, I have.
Okay.
And I've had family members who have had abortions.
Okay. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
And the reason why I'm asking you that is because, are you over that traumatic experience? Or do you still think about those folks in your life?
Oh, I think about it, but I'm over it.
You're
I
over
know
it.
that at least where my family members are, they're in a good place. I'm satisfied with it. I can't talk to them today. I know I'm going to see them later. And while I was sad when it happened and it hurt me deeply, my faith is in my God. And I'm comforted by that fact that my parents and my sister and my brother were saved. I know where they are. So, no, I'm not bothered by it any longer.
Would it surprise you that perhaps maybe people who are survivors of sexual violence are not over their experience, that traumatic event?
I can believe that.
Okay. Earlier you mentioned that there was a quote that's been sticking with you throughout this entire process. Can you restate that quote so I can get it right?
From the young lady that the doctor botched the abortion and she was born live, and her quote was simply this: "What did I do wrong for them to try to take my life?"
And my question to you is, what did people who are survivors of sexual violence do wrong?
There's nothing, but her mother was raped too, and she was the product of a rape. So she's a survivor of a rape. And her question is simply this: what did I do wrong that you want to take my life?
And my question, again, is what did these survivors do wrong?
They didn't do anything wrong.
Thank you. May I please speak on the amendment, please?
Senator J.D. Ford to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. Thank you, Senator Young, for yielding. This is, quite frankly, I can't even believe we're even debating this. The fact that we're even debating this is re-traumatizing people in our state. And I just wanted to kind of go through some facts with you to get an idea, because I do not want to be flippant about this particular point. Here's what you need to know about rape and incest in Indiana. 1 in 3 Indiana women experience sexual assault in their lifetime. Most women don't report out of fear of victim blaming or questions about behavior or attire at the time of the assault. And this is a letter that I received from the Indiana Coalition to End Sexual Assault and Human Trafficking. Most women know their perpetrator. It's often a person that they have a trusted relationship with, a teacher, a preacher, a coach, a relative. Sexual assault is about power and control and the violation of bodily autonomy. The ability to make confidential healthcare decisions, including an abortion if they choose, is an important step in regaining what has been taken from that victim, survivor. Indiana high schools, girls have reported a high rate of sexual assaults. The last statistic that I saw was 1 in 6 girls, even before they get to high school, 1 in 5 on our college campuses. At one time, Indiana ranked 2nd in the nation for girls who are raped while in high school. A girl's entire future will be impacted by a pregnancy resulting from rape or incest, including future educational opportunities, sports, or extracurricular activities. The ability to make confidential healthcare decisions, including an abortion if they choose, is an important step, as I mentioned, to regaining control in their life. 1 in 7 women who are raped become pregnant, according to a new report from the CDC. Empowerment, choice, and trauma-informed care that is centered on the victim is essential for healing. Some women may want to continue with pregnancy, which should be and only be their choice. Safe and legal abortion is one of those choices. And what you are doing with this amendment, Senator Young, is taking that choice away from these folks. With that, I respectfully ask you to defeat this amendment. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Yes, Senator Rowe. Senator Rowe is recognized to speak on the amendment.
I tripped on the, I have my purse under the desk and the cord. I think the world of you, Senator Young, but when I read this amendment, my mouth dropped, and I just simply want to say my colleagues have been very elegant. I will just say that this is an outrageous proposal fueled by the arrogance of the power of the majority, and I just ask everyone to please be reasonable and disregard this. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator Becker. Senator Becker is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. I rise in opposition to this amendment. I think it's extremely unfair to women who have been raped, sexually assaulted. The 10-year-old child that came from Ohio here, she came to get an abortion. She should never have to carry that child. And if you got to remember, if this is your daughter or your granddaughter, are you willing to say to her, sorry, but you're going to deliver that baby at the age of 10? I'm sorry, Mike, I love you and appreciate you, but in this case, I have to strongly disagree with you, and I hope you all will vote no.
Further discussion, Senator Yoder. To speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the Senate. I rise in opposition of this amendment. And to be truthful, I can't even believe the audacity of such an amendment. And it's difficult to actually even put into words the offensiveness of this amendment. I have been hesitant to even use the example of the 10-year-old girl who came here seeking help in her family's darkest hour. Because this wasn't an example. This was someone's life. And I appreciate Senator Becker saying, what if this was your daughter, your granddaughter? Victims of rape have been re-traumatized by this amendment and certainly have been dishonored. And I ask for your support in defeating this amendment. We must do better. We are better.
Further discussion, Senator Alting. Senator Alting is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. I had no intentions of coming here and to the mic on this particular topic, and usually I'm pretty decent at the mic, but I won't be today on this particular issue. What I mean is not very elegant. You know, I lost my wife, many of you know that, of cancer, and my daughter, I got one daughter and one son. She was 10. I raised her basically all by myself, no help of family, because my wife's family's from Louisiana. I won't bore you, but it scared me to death every time I'd see her. I had no sisters, so it scared me to death raising her. And I'm still, now she's 29 and single, never been married, and I watch her like a hawk. She keeps saying, Daddy, quit calling me, quit texting me, quit. But I'm afraid to death of something like this. I want everybody to know I respect Mike, and I've got good colleagues that's going to support this. And I don't think any less of you. I respect you of having the right to vote the way you want to vote. It's what it's all about. But please know you're no closer to God than some of us that are going to vote against this. Not a bit. We're all equal. You can be of faith and vote against this. My faith, my God tells me that under terrible, terrible situations, a young lady, I can't even imagine. I try to close my eyes and go to a very dark place, and my mind won't even go there, of what men do to rape cases in today's world. I'm not talking, it's all bad, but I represent Purdue. It's not just at a sorority house or fraternity house and you had too much to drink and something happened, although that's bad. But I mean horrific, terrible rape. And if that ever happened to my daughter, even at 29, I would hold her and love her, and I would tell her, because I know she'd ask, what do you think, Daddy? And I say, I'm pro-life. I I got to tell you, I'd love that child to be my grandchild. But under the condition, you've got to make that decision because you're the one that has to live with that decision. And I'll respect you and support you in either way you go. That's not being liberal, I don't think. That's not being crazy. I think it's just trying to be a good dad and trying to understand the reality of today's sick world that we live in. To give that particular person under those conditions a choice. Thank you, members of the Senate.
Further discussion, Senator Glick.
I ask the members of this body to reject this amendment and protect the young women and the ladies who are subjected to this audacious behavior. Give them that choice in their lifetime. Don't foster that evil on them after the evil they've already suffered. Please defeat this amendment.
Further discussion, Senator Toms, to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President. Members of the Senate, I just want to thank Senator Young for bringing this amendment forward. I just want to talk about my thoughts about what we're dealing with here. Talking about human behavior, yeah, it's degraded over the years. Our news stories, daily news, nightly news shows that. This is a horrible issue that we got to deal with here. And I know that the focus seems to get off of target because I came up here not to discuss abortion, but to discuss a pro-life bill, a bill about the babies, their lives. I'm talking about people, children, little guys. This is the size of a baby at 10 weeks old. Got all the features that you all have. Arms and legs, eyes, ears. They're real. They're children. We call them babies. Some call them fetuses. They're human beings. Now, I went to Catholic school. I've been a Catholic all my life. In 1966, I was a senior at Modern Day High School in Evansville. And at that time, we had nuns and priests that taught. And for the seniors that year, I was a senior there, we had Father Daywig. He was the superintendent of the school, and he was also in charge of the senior boys. And he was talking about this abortion issue, I guess because it was just starting to float to the top. I'd never heard anything about it until he was talking to us about it. Now, I got to tell you, in 1966, my focus was on getting a date for the weekend and someday owning a muscle car. The war was raging, Vietnam. I figured I was going there anyway, so I wasn't too much worried about that. My dad had the nightly news on every night, Walter Cronkite giving a rundown of what was the war was going on there. But Father David was telling us about this issue of abortion. I guess I did a lot of daydreaming during all that class instruction, but one thing he said, and for the life of me, I don't know why, but it was chiseled into my mind when he was talking about a mother that was about to give birth. And he said, as though he just said it yesterday, that it is the duty of the doctor to save both lives. Do all he can to save both of the lives of the baby and the mother. But at that critical moment, when it looked like the mother's life was truly in danger, her life would take precedence because she would live to have more babies. That was what he told us. I never thought much about it over all of those years, I guess it was just there in my mind, but I never thought much about it. And I can tell you that in 1966, if somebody would have told me, tell you what, Jim Toms, by the year 2022, you will be a Senate in the Indiana State House talking about this very issue. I never would have believed that, but here I am. And as time has gone on, and this became law of the land, that we execute the babies, those words become more familiar. They're right in the front of my mind now as we're talking here today. I cannot support any measure that will not protect these babies. Certainly want to protect these women. And this rape and incest, two wrongs will never make a right. And it is horrible. And when I talk about the degradation of the human element out here today, human behavior, it is awful. The things we see on our nightly news, we couldn't have imagined this 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago. Certainly not in 1966. An interesting thing happened here at the State House in 2019. Sort of showcased where our society is at on the lives of these little babies. We had two bills that came up on the calendar at the same time. House bills came up in this chamber. And they were uniquely identical and extraordinarily different. And there was only a few bills apart. That was what was interesting. The first bill was about tormenting and torture of animals. Meanness, hurting animals, killing animals. That was the bill. And it was debated right here in front of this microphone. And you know that bill passed. Everybody practically voted for that bill. And they should. Who would want to torment and torture animals? And a few bills later, the bill we had was about the dismemberment of a small little baby. A live little baby, and the brutality of pulling its arms and legs off while it's alive. Sort of like torture and torment of a baby. And that bill did pass. It did pass. There was some debate. I know some of the people come up and spoke against it. A lot of the people is always talking about for the children, everything's for the children, but they was speaking against that bill. But the bill passed. And I went back and I got the roll call, both House and Senate. And the bills passed with good numbers. Both of them did. But the animal bill outscored the babies. The animals got more yes votes than the baby bill did. Now that's something to think about. Now, here we are talking about this issue, trying to protect these little babies. They didn't do anything wrong, it's been said. I will never support anything that holds these little tykes guilty. I will never administer a death sentence for these little guys because of something some adult in their world did. And I hear people talking about how they get offended all the time. Their feelings are hurt. I got to believe if somebody pulled your arms and legs off of you while you're alive, that would offend you. Well, here we are, and I just want to say I did get that date that I was thinking about back in 1966. I'm married to my beautiful wife now, 52 years. I did get that muscle car, and I did go to Vietnam. And in Vietnam, when we come back home, Senator Boots can attest to this, we were called baby killers. We were called baby killers. I never killed a baby. And I dang sure ain't going to start now. And the people that called us baby killers back then are still around calling for killing babies. They are calling for killing babies. Not the Vietnam soldiers. I just want to tell you how it feels. You tell me how you feel, I'm telling you how I feel. I don't need to be cross-examined. I'm just explaining to you how I feel about this. Everybody's got your own thoughts on this. I didn't come up here to try to change your mind. You do what you think. You let your conscience be your guide on this here. But you think about it. Because these little guys, they might have got across the start line, but they never made it to the finish line. It was real short for them. We're all going to get our turn at the finish line. We got our start in life. We got to enjoy life, but we're all going to reach the end of the line. We're going to hit that finish line too. Think about what you're doing here today, guys. It's a one-time deal. Thank you, Senator Young, for what you did. And thank you for letting me share my thoughts and my feelings about this. Thank you all very much. God bless you.
Further discussion, Senator Dorio.
Speak on the bill.
Senator Dorio to speak on the amendment.
Madam President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, thank you, Jim Toms. Thank you, Jim Toms, for putting this where it needs to be with the babies. I hear people, have you experienced trauma? I have experienced trauma. I have experienced a sister that was stabbed 10 times, tied up and stabbed a dozen more times. I've experienced a mother that's been raped. I have 3 daughters. I love my daughters. I'm going to tell you, January 30th, 1998, I was blessed with a son. But all of a sudden, there was something not right. He was blue. He had pulmonary hypertension. We ended up at Chicago Children's. Thank God. I spent 2 weeks there. My son, normal sized, had 5 IV lines, had a high frequency ventilator, filling his lungs and puffing in puffs of air at 400 times a minute. I spent 18 hours a day by his bed. And when I was there, I was looking around. My son was a giant here. I would watch a nurse pick up a baby in her hand. I would watch that baby in the next incubator grab her finger. These babies wanted one thing, and that is to live. Now, you talk about the women that were assaulted. I know 2 women that were raped. And they both decided to have the child because they knew one wrong didn't make another wrong right. One gave her child up for adoption. And by the grace of God, she was able to meet that child 12 years ago. And that child is now working for a multinational corporation, traveling the world, doing good. The other child was kept. She raised that baby. He is a beautiful young man, giving his stepfather headaches now and then, as young boys do. They're alive. I met another woman this week that had 2 children. They were poor. She was coaxed into an abortion. She wasn't raped, but she was coaxed into an abortion. She went to the doctor we all know about, who was hoarding the bodies of the murdered children. And he didn't anesthetize her. And she said the most vile smell she ever smelt was her daughter being torn apart from her womb. She said it smelled of evil. And she smells it every day. Now, I'm taught, again, I'm one of those Catholics. Well, I'm a convert, Jim. Worst kind of Catholic. That life begins at conception. Life begins at conception. So I ask all of you to support this bill. One wrong doesn't make a right. We have traumas in our lives, and they're terrible. But I know 2 women that the best thing they ever did was keep their child. So I'm asking you to support this amendment, and thank you very much.
Further discussion, Senator Brown.
Madam President, members of the Senate, I know this is a hard decision and a hard discussion. Obviously, any trauma that any individual has to face, any violence, is awful to think about. And if it hasn't happened to you, so often then someone will accuse you, you don't know what it's like, you don't know what they're going through. But let's walk back a little bit and talk about what this is really about. Because there's a side here that only wants to talk about the woman, and it's a choice. I listened to the testimony through rules, and I've listened to testimony through 8 years of health committee when we've had bills like this. The other side never talks about the baby. They never talk about the other options. You never hear the word adoption, as an example. All they talk about is choice and what the mother, the woman carrying that baby, should do. So that makes any decision you make after that a lot easier, because all you're looking at is one person, one human being, not 2. And I can't get past that. I'm sorry. They're 2 human beings we're talking about. Always. Always. What happens after that depends on our laws. The laws we have currently have limitations that we are allowed to have under Roe. Now we're saying we're able to fully support life. We've never said we want 2 lives to die, the life of the mother exception, but acknowledge that there are 2 lives there. The other side never acknowledges there's life. They talk about science until it's not science, it's your faith. That's insulting. Because then when they want to talk about the fetus, the unborn, all of a sudden that's another life. You notice there are amendments to look like we don't care about funding the unborn. All of a sudden they're acknowledging that's a human life over there that needs funding. But then when we come up with bills like this, it's all about the mother's choice. That's such an easy conversation. But let's go back real quickly and review how they care about life. They don't want inspections of the abortion clinics. They don't want to ban dismemberment abortions. I've had conversations over the years with members of the pro-choice caucus that cannot believe there was such a thing as a dismemberment abortion, where you literally cut the baby up into body parts, and had to ban fetal tissue research because members of the pro-choice caucus could not imagine that somebody was actually selectively picking out brain tissue and eye tissue. Didn't believe it until we passed a bill banning that. And guess what was happening? Because IU sued the state of Indiana and lost, because that's exactly what they were doing. You wouldn't even vote to ban a coerced abortion. A pro-choice caucus wouldn't vote to ban forcing a woman to have an abortion. Wrap your head around that one for a minute. I can go through a whole host of health care protections, the reproductive rights and reproductive health care. I'll give the pro-choice caucus credit. They are great at euphemisms and messaging. But there's no reproductive health care in anything they believe in. They're against reproducing, I guess. Hundreds of thousands of Hoosiers have been aborted for no good reason, healthy or not, in the last 30, 40, 50 some years. Most of them, actually, by percentages, are minorities. I don't know what that says about the marketing and messaging of the pro-choice movement, but think about that for a second. So we can talk later about how we all as a state can fund moms and babies better. I don't think we're there yet. We had a good start in the bill we discussed earlier. But let's be honest. We're here talking about 2 lives and how to protect them, how to fund them, how to take care of them. You're only talking about 1 life. And once that conversation starts, you don't care what happens next. You don't want the mother to have informed consent. You don't want her to know what her health options are. You don't even care if the abortion clinic is clean and sanitary because you vote against inspections of them. Where, as was noted, Dr. Cloffer stored over 2,000 baby parts, didn't anesthetize the women he was operating and doing surgical procedures, and finally, after it was found, he was doing abortions in underage girls, which he didn't report. He got a 6-month suspension of his license. Did we have a conversation about, did you make a statement about that? I'm going to go back because I didn't have time to review all of my press releases, but I don't remember any pro-choice Democrat having a press conference saying we need to stop this kind of activity. You just sweep it under the rug. I acknowledge the woman going into the abortion clinic at least should not risk her life as well as the baby that's going to be killed when she walks in there. You can't even do that. That's why I support this amendment.
Senator Yoder. Senator Lannon. Senator Lannon to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. I had no intention at all of speaking on this amendment. It's not going to pass, is what I understand. But for Senator Brown to get up here and this is a bait and switch on her part. They know that this is the worst amendment that they possibly could have brought. Am I surprised this amendment was brought? Not at all. Because in appropriations, there was nobody who supported this bill because all of the pro-lifers, anti-choicers, whatever you want to call them, they wanted this. They wanted no exceptions. And so here we have a bill that says that if you are raped, if incest is committed upon you, if you're a child, you must have that rapist child. How deplorable. People of the state of Indiana want nothing to do with that. We absolutely know that. So what happens is that we come up here and instead of addressing the merits of this amendment, attack the Democrats, the pro-choice Democrats. And you're not even telling the truth. There was an amendment that was just brought less than an hour ago by Senator Niezgodski to provide adoption subsidies. We have it said that we don't care about adoptions. It was voted down. Pretty much a party line basis. I don't know how you voted, Senator Brown. I didn't look it up. If you voted for it, you can get up here and correct me. But to get up here and to cast aspersions, this is the problem. This is the problem. If you're pro-choice, you respect the opinion of the other person. It's your choice. If you believe that a fetus is a baby, if you believe that a fetus is a person, then we respect that. You don't have to have an abortion. Why don't you give us that respect as well? The public is very closely divided on this. People of goodwill can defend their positions on this in good conscience. They shouldn't be made to feel like they're devils, which I know is how you probably feel. I don't feel that way about you. You've got every right to your opinion. But get up here and defend these amendments on their own merits. Or otherwise own them. I'm asking for a roll call on this. But please, don't get up here and just cast aspersions. Or better than this, I want to thank the Supreme Court. These type of divisive discussions they're going to happen all over this country after 50 years. So congratulations, Supreme Court. You want to tear our country apart? Well, you've done a pretty good job of it.
Senator Crane. Senator Crane's recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. I know that this is a very contentious bill. We've got a lot of amendments still on the list, so I'll keep my remarks brief. I happen to be the oldest child in my family, but I'm also the fifth child in our family because before I was born, my mother lost 4 miscarriages in a row. And before the doctors were able to figure out exactly what the problem was, she had these miscarriages, and so then she became pregnant with me. She was on total and complete bed rest for the last 2 months of the pregnancy, and I was born 2 months premature in March of 1973. And I weighed 3 pounds and 14 ounces. Now, I've put on a little weight since then. I'm working on it. But every day when we stand in here and we have the opportunity to pray and to offer the pledge, and I look up at the flag and I think about how unlikely it is that I would be standing here in the Senate. Not only that, but to be able to be here on such a consequential issue. In about 1979, 1980, Dr. C. Everett Koop and Dr. Francis Schaeffer wrote a book called Whatever Happened to the Human Race. And the very first portion of that book says that every nation in every age will ultimately be judged by this test. How did it treat people? That obviously is the overt and sometimes covert, the obvious or sometimes subtle catalyst and motivation for virtually every single thing that we do in this chamber. Trying to figure out how we can help people. All the different bills that we try to pass, all the different rights that we protect, those who are vulnerable and in a state of want and need, we do our best to try to come alongside them and protect them. I firmly believe that is our job. But I'll leave you with this thought. We cannot fight for the rights of any person on any issue if they aren't first given the right to life. We can't fight for the right to health care. You can't even fight for the right to choose, let alone the right to liberty and happiness and freedom and all these things that we fight for. We can't fight for the rights of any person on any issue if they aren't first given the right to live. And I recognize that this is a very difficult issue, and unfortunately, it's pitting 2 very important issues and constituencies. Young women who have been in crisis situations and who have been subjected to atrocities that are beyond imagination through rape and incest and other circumstance. But also the unborn child in the womb who did nothing. And I think it's important for us to not give in and subject the child to a death sentence simply because the circumstances of how they came to be in the womb were atrocious. Thank you very much, Madam President.
Further discussion, Senator Pohl. Senator Pohl is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President. You know, my background is a criminal defense attorney. It's how I started out of law school. I actually went to law school with Senator Young. And in criminal law and in law enforcement, as I know some of you have a background in, we deal with situations that could be considered the worst of the worst. Situations that are unspeakable crimes, rape being one of them. Now I sit on the Corrections Committee with Senator Young, with Senator Freeman, and we propose laws that punish and deter those actions. This does not do that. This amendment does not punish or deter anybody. What essentially this does is it gives a massive win to rapists and incestual relatives. This gives them the ability to pick the mother of their child and doesn't give that victim a say. This doesn't take away the rape victim in Senator Dorio's story, her ability to make the determination to have her children. What it says is it tells the rape victim, you don't have a choice, just like your rapist did. You don't have a choice in what happens to your own body, just like the rapist did. I ask you to please vote this down. Thank you.
Further discussion? Senator Walker. Senator Walker is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. You know, I'm relatively new to this body, and quite frankly, I'm shocked we're having this debate. I rise in opposition to this amendment because of what it says. You know, we've got a situation where these situations where a woman would be the victim of violent sexual assault, impregnated, and through no fault of their own, we're going to say, no, you're going to have that baby. Whether they're 10 years old or 15 years old or 35 years old, the age doesn't really matter. If that's your daughter, if that's your wife, if that's your mother, anyone, any female that's special to you in your life, I just can't imagine saying it. I couldn't say it. I couldn't look them in the eye and say, no, I know that it's not your fault, but you're going to have that baby. I just couldn't do it. I mean, where's our compassion for those victims? You know, Senator Lannon's right. The public's divided on some of the nuances of this overall bill. They're not divided on this issue. The vast majority of folks, certainly those that I've talked to, but the vast majority of people in this state and I think around the country are not divided on this issue. They think it is a reasonable accommodation, a reasonable middle ground, if you will, on a very, very difficult subject. And I would ask that you join me in voting against this amendment.
Further discussion? Senator Greg Walker. Yes. Senator Young, would you yield to questions? Senator Greg Walker.
Thank you, Senator Young, for the yield. Appreciate it.
You're welcome, sir.
You talked about your beliefs and what shapes those beliefs, and I'm familiar somewhat with your religious background. We've got family that know each other from where they've worshiped for years. So I know what shapes your faith. I know what shapes your beliefs, and those same histories and those same lessons and those same stories and those same respect for God's word shapes my beliefs too. I appreciate what you've got to say about that. I want to test your Bible knowledge a little bit if you're willing to put up with it.
Hey, if I could have Matt Barnes correct me, I'll do it.
No spotters on this one. So you're familiar with King David of Israel. and a woman named Bathsheba. You're familiar with the account? And you know that Bathsheba was called to the king's chambers late at night after the king had observed her bathing and he was attracted to her. From your legal understanding, do you think there's sufficient cause for concern of whether that was coerced or even a rape? You think there's some evidence that might suggest that was the case?
Well, I wasn't alive back there, and so
Understand.
I don't really know that. But if it was forced upon a woman without her consent, that would be rape.
Just talking about the historical account in the Old Covenant, the Old Bible, the Old Testament. Do you remember that Bathsheba was married? You remember what David did to her husband?
He killed her.
He had her killed. And why did he kill her? Why did he kill the husband?
Because he wanted to be with his wife.
He wanted to conceal the evidence that the child was his, as opposed to that.
But he also wanted to be with
He was looking for a way to conceal the result of that rape, the pregnancy. And he had the husband murdered. A child was born, was it not?
Yes.
Do you remember what happened to the child?
I think the child went on to do great things.
The child died soon after birth.
Oh, okay. I don't. Matt, I'm sorry.
The child died soon after birth. Permission to speak on the bill.
Senator Walker to speak on the amendment.
The child died at the hand of God the Father. If you're a believer in the Old Covenant, you'll know that God took the life of that child, and that child was innocent. The child was not guilty of the sins of his father. I get that. But as we debate our belief system, and we understand that our beliefs are shaped strongly by our heritage, our faith, lots of inputs. Who took that life? We know the value of a living person. We know the value of every living person. I do not contest anything that was said by anyone in this chamber that talks about the value of life. And I've been such a strong believer in that value. I don't remember ever not having that same conviction myself. I can't ever recall a time where that was a question for me, or that I had reservations over understanding the value of life. I look at these victims of sexual assault that result in a pregnancy. And I can't imagine how difficult that decision must be. But I'll tell you why, as a strong pro-life believer myself. We've kind of pitted this question, this motion, on whether you're really about life or whether you're not. So let me just explain why, as one who believes strongly that I will be judged by a superior being for what I do in regards to this law and others. I believe that with all my heart. I answer to the public, but there's a higher power that I answer to. With that strong conviction, I'll tell you why I oppose this amendment. Indiana is one of 50 sister states who are all in the process of contemplating, debating, or maybe they even passed language prior to the Dodd decision that changes how abortions are governed in their states. And we already know other states have made proclamations. Send us your business if you're not willing to do that in your home state. We'll make accommodations for you. Many live in Indiana just minutes across the border from other parts of the country that will provide whatever kind of abortion you are seeking, up to certain limits, be that 20 weeks or whatever their laws are in their land, in their state. But it's a very porous, that is, leaky sieve. We don't govern the borders of the state of Indiana to the point where we stop movement across state lines. We've had challenging questions about what we can do to govern those who would promote or help those seeking abortion in the state. And I'll tell you why I think that this motion works against the cause of saving as many children in the womb as we can. Now, that may not be your agenda, but that's mine. That's my goal. So if this motion is adopted, and there's no exception for rape and incest, extremely difficult decisions, extremely difficult circumstances, just horrendous, as we've all said and agreed. And in Indiana, there is no choice on the question for victims of sexual assault. So what do? They're assaulted and it results in a pregnancy. And they say, Indiana has given me nothing to do but, I can go across state lines. I might Google on the internet and see what kind of chemicals I can have mailed to my house. I'm desperate because I don't have anyone that can help me. And I think about the women in that situation. As a strong pro-lifer, I think about those women who don't hold the same convictions I do, but they're faced with these life-changing questions at a very pivotal moment. And we said there are no options in the state. With the allowance for the exception, they may call a trusted friend. They may call on a teacher. They may call on a pastor. They may call on a counselor. They may call on a pregnancy resource center and say, I'm in a really difficult spot. And I think maybe you can help me make a very difficult decision. And if we accept this motion, what are the people in Indiana going to believe regarding those choices? I can't talk to anyone about it. I can't seek any advice. They may out me. I may get in trouble. I may be in worse trouble than I am now. I'm the victim of a crime, but it could get worse. I may be completely wrong about this, but I'm convicted in my heart that we can save more unborn children so that they can experience life with the exception rather than without. And you may think that's crazy. You may think that that's counterintuitive. But we all know human nature to some degree. And we all know that when there's a will, there's a way. And especially if people feel desperate, especially if people feel as though their back is against the wall and they have nowhere to turn, do they seek and find the most desperate solutions to their desperate problems? And I would like for them to have an opportunity, and in fact, encourage us as citizens of the state of Indiana, those who work in the pregnancy resource centers, those who counsel, those who, a myriad of contacts. I think we are losing an opportunity to help guide people. We talk about choice. Let me finish my comments. Again, I don't know that I'm swaying what's mine, but I received this just this morning from a constituent who I don't know anyone that is more pro-life than this individual. Let me read you a short text and I'll finish my comments. Of course, last night's conversation has been on my mind since we spoke last night, as it is on yours every day. Here's my thoughts, which are probably exactly what you said, but in different words. And this is what they said. I am pro-choice. God gave that to every person from day one. And I'm so thankful. And he gave me arguments for choosing his way, with the benefits and the ultimate consequences for not choosing his way. He doesn't prevent or control one's individual choice, so I can't either. So be it information, making one's own life choices, the accountability for ones that you've made, education, adoption, maybe watching a video on an abortion, prayer. They're all viable options, but one's own choice, even God, won't take away what He's already given to us. And she says, hard lesson to learn. I don't stand here to try to justify my vote. I stand before my Creator as the ultimate arbiter of how I feel and how I sleep at night for the choices that I make in this body. And I'm just asking you, as a pro-life committed person myself, please consider that you may feel as though you're just doing everything you can and every life is precious, and I agree completely. I just don't think this motion will get us where we want to be when we have an opportunity to reach out and touch and make a difference in our communities for life. Thank you, Madam President.
Let's further discussion. Senator Taylor. Senator Taylor to speak on the amendment.
Thank you. I actually left out of here and went to my office till I heard one of my colleagues bash my caucus. So I'm going to talk about that first, and then since you made me get up here by doing that, then I'm going to talk about the amendment and why this amendment is here. I don't know what it's going to take for us to come together when we disagree and start respecting each other. But we need to do that as soon as possible. And you can turn away from this. We can turn away from all the things that we've done. And I might not agree with Senator Bray or Mark Messmer or Senator Young, but I have never, and they will tell you, I have never disparaged them in this body. And we better turn away from our wicked ways. Because see, sometimes when God gives us a test, the test is not just about how we feel about somebody else. It's about how we feel about ourselves. See, over and over, there are parables in the Bible, and I'm glad Senator Walker brought up one of my best stories. You have to forgive me. I'm really not an order on the Old Testament. I'm more of a New Testament guy. That's what we had to learn in Vacation Bible School. And if you remember correctly, Jesus gave his disciples all these tests. And the main one, he told them, you will defy me before I go. And he said, no, I won't. Jesus, I love you. And then came the time for him to show that he loved Jesus, and his actions didn't dictate what he had just said to Jesus Christ. Well, that's what we're doing here today. See, because we can get up here and talk about, and let me say this. I want to give my colleague Mike Young a hoorah for bringing this amendment. I don't agree with it, but at least he had the guts to stand up here and do it. Because some of you that got up here and said you don't support it are the same ones that turned down these amendments that we had that would help the children when they are here. And see, that's what Jesus was telling them. Before I go, you will turn on me. That's what I'm scared about with this amendment. Jesus saved a lot of people. He saved a leper. If those of you who know the story about the leper he's speaking to hundreds of thousands of people, and he let this guy come down through the middle of the tent, and he blessed him. And we all have these stories and we tell them, but I got one for you that might even, outdo some of yours. I told you a story about my sister. Do you remember what I said? And Senator Landon put it best. And Senator Brown, I think you should hear what he said. We're not telling you that you can't have a baby by somebody who raped you. I don't think I've ever said that. Senator Landon didn't say it. And for you to get up here and say that we didn't support the coerced abortion bill, that's because we wanted it narrowly defined. And you know as well as I do, we talked about scenarios where these mothers and fathers of these children could be subject to penalty by advising their children of the facts about whether or not that they should have a child. See, don't do that little thing. Going back to biblical times, Jesus said, you will do this. The final piece of this puzzle for all of us should be that pro-choice or pro-life, we're all the same people. Don't judge me because I decided, and me and my family decided that my sister could have a baby that some of you and your family didn't want. I've been through it. See, my actions speak louder than my words. So criticize me, critique me. I'm here. I can take it. But don't separate us over this. Senator Young, you brought this amendment because you believe that there should be no exception. I'm about this close to you on that. You know what the separation is? I don't think I should be able to tell Rob Bray's daughter to have a child. I don't think I should tell Ron Alting's daughter to have a child. I don't think I should tell Charbonneau's daughter or Charbonneau's sister to have a child in any circumstance. It's the only difference. So for all you guys who profess this pro-life stuff, you're looking at somebody who practiced it. In the toughest situation you could ever think about, I went pro-life. So when you start telling me I'm not, then I got a story for you. And I challenge that story to any story you have. I don't like this amendment because it forces a woman to do something. It forces her. She doesn't have the choice. And we shouldn't be doing that. It's that simple. We shouldn't be getting mad at each other and calling people out over that. But if we're going to be pro-life, for my colleagues that stood up here and, make your actions speak louder than your words. Defeat this amendment, and tomorrow, defeat the bill.
Further discussion. Senator Gaskill?
Why do they wait till I get the...
Senator Gaskill is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President and members of the Senate. I don't come up here a lot, maybe more than I should. Don't want to be up here today, but feel that I have to. It's been an honor to serve in the Senate with each and every one of you. I don't think I deserve it, but somehow God allowed me to be here. And this is a tough one, a real tough one. I certainly understand colleagues of both political parties having deeply held views. I'm up here today to represent Jesus. I love Jesus more than I love being in the Senate. And I know that there are many of you here who also love Jesus, some of whom maybe will vote the same as me on this, and others who will vote differently. One of the things that Jesus spoke very clearly about is how he expected us to behave towards others, that he wanted us to love our enemies and to do good for them, to bless them. And I think I have seen today some very heartfelt testimony. I've seen some that was kind of pointed towards those that had the other view. And I'm not going to do that. If you agree with me, I love you. If you don't agree with me, I love you. The question I keep asking myself is, the babies who are aborted or have been aborted since Roe v. Wade, millions of babies in this country, and a large number even our own state. This is a rhetorical question, but do you think those babies go to heaven that were aborted? And it's rhetorical, Senator Taylor. And I wonder if those that were conceived out of a rape that were aborted, I think that they would probably go to heaven too. And I think the hardest, if you look at the people that Jesus most harshly criticized in his day, it was kind of the political leaders, the Pharisees. They were kind of a political class. And he said it was harder for a camel to go through the eye of a needle or easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than a rich man to enter the kingdom of heaven. And I wish he would have maybe told another analogy of what it's like for politicians to make it there. But we gotta love each other as we go through this. And the position that Senator Young has taken with this amendment is, I agree, is very controversial, and it's from a deeply held view. And he knew before he brought it what the consequences were going to be. And I honor him for doing it anyway. Whether you agree with him or disagree with him, there is no doubt in his mind that he's going to face consequences for bringing this amendment, regardless of whether or not it passes. And there are some of us who are going to vote with him on this amendment, and we know that we are going to face consequences from that as far as from our fellow man. But please, as you speak on the bill and as you speak in the press, I urge those on both sides not to question the motives of those who are voting opposite of what you are. Some of us may not get reelected for taking the affirmative on Senator Young's amendment. And it's probably politically much safer to take the other approach. And I enjoy being in the Indiana Senate. but I love Jesus. And I think, abortion was not something that was known in the time when he walked on the earth. So no, he didn't speak to it. People didn't really know what abortion was. It wasn't possible at that time. So he didn't really speak directly to it, but he spoke about children. And you remember when he was in a crowd of people and the adults all wanted to hear what he had to say. And people kept bringing their little children up for him to put his hands on them and bless them. And some of the adults in the crowd rebuked them, chastised them, get those kids away so we can hear what Jesus has to say to the adults. But Jesus said, let the little children come to me and don't hinder them. Now let's get a little more, I think we know what his view was on children. There is no one in this chamber, out of all 50 of us, that questions the horrificness of rape as a crime. There's not many things that we are united on in this. We have political differences, but we all uniformly and to a person, if you asked us, what do you think of rape? We're all horrified by it. And whatever laws we pass here are not going to change men's hearts. If the law of Moses could not change people's hearts, that he received that law directly from God, then the laws of the Indiana General Assembly are not going to be successful in that endeavor either. So I would ask each of you, what we do here is important, but what we do in our communities every day and sharing the love of Jesus with others is more important than even what you're going to cast your vote on this issue, in my opinion. We have to love people that have been raped. We have to wrap our arms around them in our communities. And I have listened to, I've read stories, testimonies of women who have born children out of rape, women who have decided to have abortions because of a rape. I've talked to people personally who have been through it. And the one thing that I've heard from these women is that rape, or that abortion, is not a therapy for rape. I've heard from a woman who said that my abortion made it worse. It didn't help me recover from the rape, it made it worse. I've shared a personal story with my caucus, which I'm not going to share today, a pro-life story. I cried like a little 3-year-old girl when I told it to him. But I can tell you that the most healing thing that can happen when people are hurting is for their fellow man to wrap their arms around them and love them, share with them the love of Christ. I've heard stories from women who said that it was actually part of their healing process that they decided to go ahead and carry their child. I've heard from children, I think somebody earlier, I think it might have even been Senator Young, mentioned the question of the child conceived in rape whose abortion was botched, and what did I do wrong? Some problems in life, there are no good answers. But I know that God loves every human being that's ever been conceived. And I think he wants us to choose life. Please don't villainize those of us that are going to vote for this amendment. Please don't villainize us. We're holding to our deeply held beliefs of what we think our Lord and Savior wants us to do, and we may be wrong. But we're not doing this because we want to force and tell somebody what to do. We're standing up for what we believe our Lord and Savior wants us to do, to value all life. Thank you, Senator Young, for taking a courageous stand, and you'll be in my prayers constantly.
Further discussion, Senator Yoder. Senator Gaskell, will you yield to questions?
Yes.
Senator Yoder.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. Senator Gaskell, actually this question I have been wanting to ask several of your colleagues, and so you were here, and
You could have picked somebody a lot better to question than me out of all the people that talked, but I'm willing to try.
I know we are, this is not, we're both probably going to vote differently on this.
Probably
My
right.
question is about, there is an exception in this amendment. And we've heard from you, and we've heard from Senator Toms and Senator Young, Senator Brown. If I forgot someone, I apologize. Senator Dorio, about this, but at the end of the day, there is an exception.
Are you talking about the life of the mother?
Yes. So talk to me, how do you come to that decision? How is that not contradictory to what we've heard in your testimonies?
I don't think it's contradictory. I think those of us that are of the same position as Senator Young on this, it's our goal to love them both. And I just don't think you can ask someone to, some people choose willingly to give their life for another. And I think that's, very honorable. But I don't think if you value life, you have to value all life, and you just that's where we come down on it.
But that's the contradiction, because Senator Toms was saying that no one is asking the little guy that you were showing us. So, I mean, I'm not there. I can respect that. It's a very difficult choice. But in this case, it doesn't have a choice. So I don't understand how this exception fits into the belief system.
We probably just won't agree on that part of the issue either.
But
I don't think it's a contradiction.
But you're voting to adopt an amendment. I'm assuming others have said that they're supporting the amendment that removes, that it is, you're taking away the life. And I know Senator Toms was talking about a conversation he had with a doctor, and the doctor said, well, that woman can go on to have other children. But I don't know, what was it? Okay, the priest.
Excuse me. We need to keep the conversation. You're asking a question to Senator Gaskell, please.
So it was a priest.
Yeah, if you want to question Senator Toms, you can call him up
I
next.
just needed to get the story right. So the priest or the doctor, the priest was saying that the woman can go on to have other children. But I guess I don't understand the argument, because what about the fetus, this baby, that you're choosing one life over the other? My point is, it does sound like, or is there not a choice being made, an exception in this amendment?
If you don't give a woman that choice, you're forcing her to give up her life, aren't you?
Well, so there is an exception. So you are essentially giving the choice to the woman in your amendment. And all of the conversation that we've had over the last hour and a half maybe about taking away the life from the baby, and that's why you're supporting this amendment. This amendment actually goes against what it is we've heard several senators speak to. Is that correct?
I categorically disagree with the premise of your argument and your question.
Okay, well, I appreciate you taking my questions. Thank you.
Further discussion? Yes, Senator Niskotsky. Senator Niskotsky is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thanks, Madam President, members of this great assembly. I am so totally conflicted by this, and I know that there are a great number of you feel the same way. I think that some very strongly believe in their beliefs, and they're soundly setting on those beliefs. Maybe some within my caucus may feel the very same way, but I think there's a great deal of confliction. You know, one of the things that I see is that, or I believe, I think in some manner, shape, or form, that we are all going to have to face judgment at some point when we cross across that veil, walk across on the other side of that veil, wherever that is, however that is, there'll be some form of judgment. And I think that the greatest of you in this assembly that believes so strongly that you may have to face that by not making the decision you're trying to make with this decision, that you might feel that you're going to be judged. Well, I feel that there's a very strong chance that I will face some form of judgment. But there's one thing we don't know. We do not know, we cannot know how we're going to be judged. Many of us spend our entire lives learning the concepts of religion and all the doctrine, but still you cannot know what that judgment is going to be. None of us know that. So what I'm conflicted with is I don't know if it's for me to judge or be judged. If I decide for another person, if I take that right of choice from another person to make that choice, because I may ruin many more lives if I make that choice, I may cause others to die, and believe me, I think about that baby. I do believe. I am one of our caucus that I am a pro-life person, but that is my individuality. I'm an individual that believes that, but there is something, sometimes in documents, things are made, the words are very, very strong, and sometimes the beginning of those documents hold some of the greatest key. We declare that all people are created equal. Now, I know that you probably believe that, I'm sure that you believe from the womb that that is a person that is created equal. But the whole point is, how are we going to be judged? So I don't want to be judged by casting judgment for someone else. And that is where I have to rest and how I serve in this assembly as a state senator.
Further discussion? Senator J.D. Ford. Senator J.D. Ford, question Senator Gaskell. Do you yield? Senator J.D. Ford.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. Thank you, Senator Gaskell, for yielding. I just have a question for you. You mentioned earlier that you are a man of faith. Is that correct?
I'm a believer in Jesus Christ.
Okay. I just wanted to rise just to ask you a question. Senator Kador and I have a high population of Jewish folks that live in our district. I'm not sure what your district looks like. And I'm sure that many of you have many different religions in your districts. And would you be surprised to know that the Jewish concept of pikuach nefesh, which is the preservation of life, is paramount to the Judaism?
Can you restate that? I want
Sure.
to make sure I'm understanding.
Essentially, what that means is that Judaism holds that all life is sacred, and while a fetus has the potential for life, such potential never supersedes the life of the pregnant women. And so I guess my question to you is that your deeply held religious beliefs is what you just came to the microphone and talked about. But my question to you is, why does your religious beliefs supersede Jewish folks that live in my district, who believe deeply that the life of the mother it doesn't supersede the life of the mother? Does that make sense to you?
Sounds like the premise to your position or question, whichever it is there, is that their belief is that a person is not a person until after birth. Is that the way you stated it?
I didn't state it like that. Let me restate it to you, please. Judaism holds that all life is sacred. While a fetus has the potential for life, such potential never supersedes the life of the pregnant woman. The Jewish community regards any absolute ban on abortion as a violation of our rights, including in the cases of rape and incest. And what I'm asking you is, why does your First Amendment rights trump their First Amendment rights and their ability to freely exercise their deeply held religious beliefs?
That's not my position, that my religious views trump somebody else's. That's not my position.
Okay, but you are voting for this amendment, is that correct?
I'm going to vote for the amendment, yes.
Okay, and by doing so, we are taking the exceptions away from rape and incest, is that correct?
This amendment would leave the exception as the life and health of the mother, as I understand it.
Okay. Thank you, Senator Gaskell.
Further discussion, Senator Melton. Senator Melton is recognized to speak on the amendment.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. I was out yesterday. I had to go home on some important issues, and I had to, before I left home, I had to take a moment to sit down and make sure I explained to my kids why I was away. Something just made me just stop, because they're so used to me coming down to session that it's almost normal and natural to them that I'm away. But for us to leave during this time of year, it was abnormal for them. And I had to explain to my daughter what we were doing and the issues that we were debating today. And it was extremely hard and difficult, but she's a young teenager, and she's starting to keep up with these issues on her own, and I didn't really have to explain much to her. When it comes down to this specific amendment, one of the things that came up earlier, specifically that Senator Brown was mentioning, and I don't want to misquote, but as it was being projected on a specific party or a specific caucus that believe a specific way, I just want us to take a pause as we continue. We're just talking about the very First Amendment, among others. We haven't even gotten to the bill yet. And it's already been stated how we need to have the decorum and how we need to respect one another's opinions and views. Because it's a tough enough issue as it is. And when I think about the young women and the ladies that are watching this, that have experienced that trauma, that have experienced and been through so much, and what they're reliving, it's just hard for me to imagine having to go through that. So I commend everyone that came up to speak very passionately about their position on these issues. I'm, of course, vote no against it, not because I'm a Democrat, not because I'm a part of the Senate Democratic Caucus, but it's because of the hundreds of testimonies that we've heard, that we've read. Is me learning throughout this process that every single situation that involves an abortion is unique and different and is not a one-size-fits-all situation. It was a learning process for me that helped me arrive at the decisions that's going to allow me to make the votes that I'm going to make. And it's the testimonies that I've heard that allow me to arrive at the decisions that I'm going to make, from the doctors to testimonies, from the women, and so forth. So, again, we've already talked about the respect. We already talked about the passionate conversation that's going to take place. And I hope that once this very First Amendment, and hopefully it is defeated, that we'll continue to have that respect and decorum moving forward and allowing our differences to get past this issue, and we can truly be about the people's business. Me and my belief that government shouldn't be reaching or overreaching into the personal decisions of a person's body. We'll get into that tomorrow, and I'll be able to explain my vote holistically there. But on this particular amendment, I think it's extremely important that we defeat this and hopefully the entire bill. Thank you.
Is there further discussion? Senator Yoder. Senator Yoder to question Senator Young. Do you yield? Do you yield?
Certainly, I will.
Senator Yoder.
Thank you, Madam President, members of the Senate. Senator Gaskell said life and health of the mother. So could you explain what you're envisioning? Because it was a pretty brief amendment. What do you mean by life of the mother?
Life of the mother is where the mother's in danger of losing her life to carry the unborn baby to term. And that is it.
I wish we would have some info. I mean, I wish we could talk this through, because does it include?
I'll answer your question, so let's do it.
Okay. So can you, this feels unfair, but can you give some scenarios? Like what would this encompass? I just don't know what life of the mother.
Well, let me tell you.
If it's not health and life, then just life. What is that?
Life is when she's going to likely die. She would have an ectopic pregnancy where the baby attaches outside the womb, and it's going to live for no more than 2 weeks. And if that baby will erupt and she will bleed, her life would be in danger from that. And in the stuff that we have, our belief is that that doctor can do that if the woman decides, I don't want to take a chance and risk my life, that they can take that unborn baby. There are other things like that too that would affect her life, that a doctor would make the determination, and it's not up to me to say, but if they believe that that woman would carry that baby to term and she's not likely to survive from the carrying of that child, her life would be in danger, and it's okay for that person to make that choice. Some women choose to go ahead and take that risk, and that's fine. Because what happens in this situation is we could lose 2 lives. We're certainly going to lose the baby in the ectopic pregnancy, but we could also lose the mother's life. And in our own laws here, as you as an individual, if you go downtown and go through our city where people will get accosted and killed, that you have the right under our law to defend your life. And this is the same concept. That is a defense. It's an exception in the bill, but under our law, you have the right to protect yourself from losing your life.
So no health and life. I just wanted to make sure that was
I believe that there's nothing in my amendment that talks about the health. It talks only about the life of the mother.
At that point, she would have a choice.
She would make the choice based upon the medical evidence or medical diagnosis and suggestions from the medical doctor as to what she should do.
Okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're welcome.
Further discussion, Senator Pohl. Senator Pohl, to question Senator Young, do you yield?
Yes, I will.
Senator Pohl.
Senator Young, you had just brought up downtown crime. It was something that we dealt with in the regular session earlier, correct?
We did? Downtown crime?
The Marion County crime package.
Oh, okay. Hey, I don't remember what I did yesterday. Okay. All right. Thanks for helping me out.
In that crime package, we talked a lot about serious violent offenders, correct? Does that include rapists?
It does. I believe if you use a weapon of some sort on the rape, there's different categories, as you know, of rape, and it gets higher depending on how it's done.
Okay.
And if you have a weapon, it'll be a higher offense.
Okay, we'll go with that. So, my question to you is, you have a family member, you have a colleague, they are attacked, they're raped in downtown Indianapolis. They are stalked. This was the result of being stalked by either a domestic relationship or just somebody who was obsessed with the individual. And they cared nothing about what happened to them. There's not a law that we could write that would deter them from raping a person that they wanted to rape. You're telling me that with your exception, you, in your clear conscience, could give that individual the gratitude of picking their rapist's mother, or picking the mother of their child.
That would be the result, yes.
You're okay with a incestual relative, despite any law that you could pass, picking the mother of their child, and knowing that knowing that that mother has to carry that child, regardless of what happens to the individual.
Is it a result, so I understand your question, is it a result of a rape in an incestual relation, or is it because of a consensual
that's a great question.
I know.
Let me ask you that.
I was going to use it in my clothes.
Well, let me ask you that. So you have a 16-year-old, or you have a 15-year-old who has a relative that has sexually molested them for several years. And ultimately they get to that age where they could have a child, but it was consensual.
At what age? I'm sorry.
At 15 years old.
They can't consent?
Exactly.
Okay, they can't consent.
Exactly. They could not consent.
Right.
So essentially, it doesn't necessarily matter in terms of incest. In that situation, you have an individual who will commit rape or incest, doesn't matter which, because essentially that's what's covering, what your amendment is doing is getting rid of both. You're okay with giving that individual the gratification of selecting the mother of their child?
I'm not satisfied with a person that goes up and shoots one and kills one of your members. I would never be in favor of that. So why would I be in favor of something like that?
Well,
that's not the issue here, because that's an attack and a crime upon another person. What this amendment is about the baby inside the mother who's done nothing wrong, and somebody takes and kills that baby, and it can never talk for itself. It will never have a chance to have a life. And what you're telling me is, if they rape the woman, we ought to kill the baby. And that is not right. And I will never, ever accept that.
You and Senator Brown bring up the same point. You focus on two individuals in these situations, the mother and the child. But in your situation that you are putting on this chamber, you're ignoring the fact that you're giving a rapist the ability to pick the mother of their child. And that mother has to, not decides to, whether they have to.
I resent the thing that you're saying I'm giving them the right. I have never given them the right. I wouldn't give them the right. It is a crime, and if we have the right prosecutors, we will go after them and put them in jail.
Exactly. I'm telling you, in a situation, I mean, we have crimes against rape on the books, correct?
Right.
And that does not stop rapists.
And neither does murder.
Correct.
Okay.
I agree with you.
Our laws are for punishment. It's not going to stop. Now, if you're halfway honest, you're probably going to follow the law because you don't want to get in trouble. But for the bad people, which is a small percentage of the population that commits those crimes, there is no law we can have that's going to stop them from committing a crime.
But you're putting a law on that is going to force a woman to carry a child of no fault of her own, of no choice of her own, whatsoever.
Right.
How does that make you any better than the rapist?
Well, first of all, I'm not going to answer that question because I don't break the law. And I'm better people that break the law. And to try to compare me to somebody who doesn't care about a civil society and the protection of every one of our rights under our laws, I resent that question.
And I'll withdraw that. You know what? I'll give you that. I'll give you that. But the point is, you are putting a person in the situation where they don't have a choice, regardless of the fact that they're already a victim.
Yeah, I don't disagree. That's what my amendment does.
Correct.
I got it. I know that.
Mike, I can't. I mean, I'm just disappointed in this one. No further question.
Okay.
Is there further discussion? Senator Young, would you like to close?
I'd like to close, Madam President. Thank you. I know it's a long time. It's 9:30. I know we have another bill to do. I don't know exactly what our timetables are, how we're going to do this tonight. But there's been a lot of statements made that I just want to take the time, because this is one of the most, let me say it this. This is the most important issue in our lifetime. And whatever we decide here tonight, we will be judged by what we did here. And we have to do the right thing. I know that in our caucus, well, let me do this. The caucus, the Republican caucus, I know. In the Republican caucus, I know there are 24 individuals over here. Before they got here and while they're here, they believe in life. And I know that they believe the only exception is the life of the mother. There are babies waiting for us to speak. And just to think, all we need is 24 people with the courage to stand up for what they believed in, what they've always fought for, and what they tried to defend, to do the right thing here today. Now, Senator Lannon, you jumped on me because I brought an amendment that was not supposed to win. You guys brought about 40 of them tonight, and you knew not one of them was going to win. I think I have the same right as you guys to bring an amendment, whether it wins or whether it loses, because I'm doing what I think you guys did. I'm doing it for what I believe in and what I think is the right thing. And if you guys can call your amendments, I can call mine. Now, there have been great debates in our country. Under the Constitution of 3/5 a person, I think it's repugnant that we would count somebody less than us. But they did it. They had their reasons. They were trying to form a nation to give birth to a new concept of freedom and liberty. I don't agree with that, but they had some tough choices to make. The great compromise on slavery. I don't even agree with that. But they were trying to solve an issue that was dividing our nation, and they made it worse by saying, you can have slaves here, but you can't have slaves there. What's the difference in that? Then we get to choose, these babies die over here, and these babies live over here. That compromise didn't work because it failed. Because we recognize as a people, you cannot, under law, enslave somebody and not enslave somebody else. We knew it was wrong. It took us a while to get our bearings, but we did the right thing. I don't know if we'll ever have another opportunity if we go down this road and put those exceptions into our code to ever get that changed. I don't want to be remembered like those individuals who did that. And thank God there was people under President Lincoln that had the courage to do what he wanted. And if you ever saw the movie about the 13th Amendment, there were people on our side that didn't want to give up that freedom to the people who were slaves. They didn't want to give them the right to vote. They didn't want to give them the freedom to own property. But you know what? Lincoln, who believed in something, even though he had opposition against him, and people said, well, that's going to lose. But you never know when you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, whether they'll win. Let me tell you, this is the great debate. People will remember us, what we did. I don't understand, at least in your arguments about rape and incest, how you can ever agree to incest. Now, unless it's rape and incest, that's rape, whether it's in a marriage or a boyfriend and girlfriend being together, nobody has a right to rape anybody. That rape and incest is a crime regardless of whether it was incest. It's a crime to rape somebody. But under those exceptions you guys want, here's what you want to do. You want to give to two people, even though it's against the law, but they're in an incestual relationship, and they have a child, what you say to them is, with this exception, you abort your baby. But if you're married or in a boyfriend-girlfriend and you have a child, you don't have the same right that somebody who broke the law. Well, then people will say they'll have a lot more birth defects, things like that. And so they should have that abortion. But you know, birth defects and deformities of kids happen in a marriage all the time. Not on the same level, but they happen. They happen in a boyfriend-girlfriend. And what you're saying is this: if it's incest, kill your baby. If you're married or in a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship, you can't do it if your baby's got a defect. But we'll give it to somebody who broke the law. That is not right. And then we talk about traumatizing these people. And I know it's a trauma. But the person I told you about, Senator Ford, that was in my family, it traumatized her every day after she had that abortion. I don't know if it's ever gone away. And she had the abortion. You think that having an abortion takes away the trauma? 80% of the people who have abortions regret it. I never heard that come up one time. Not one time for people who have abortions and they're traumatized the rest of their lives. But there's no consideration for them. You know, and I'll just clarify this real quick. The life of the mother is the exception because we believe in self-defense. We allow it in our own code. But the thing is, if you don't give them that exception, we have two lives that are going to be lost instead of one. Either the baby will die or it could live, or the mother could die or live, or both. And so that is the reason for the exception, Senator Yoder, is so we can save a life and let the mother make the choice. But That's defending her body. And I think every person has a right to defend themselves, whether it's a person on the gun with a gun on the circle, or whether somebody else has done something to that woman, and she gets to make the choice if her life is in danger. I am not going to burden anybody with doing something. If you know you're going to die, you got to do something if it's going to cost your life. Nobody's for it. That's why we have that exception. Now, if this happens and people talk about babies, they're human beings. And we talk about women's right. We're taking away their right. I understand they may believe they have a right, but there is no right. We just found out there is no right in the Constitution. None whatsoever. Let me ask you this. What rights have we taken away from little girls and little boys who have no say-so whatsoever? What rights do they have? They have none. And Senator Walker, you know, I didn't pass the Sunday school test on your question on that one. That's fine. But you know, it was our Creator who took that life. And what he said clearly was this. He didn't give us the right to kill a baby in the womb. He did not give that to us. He never said we could. He is the decider of that issue. And when we do it, what was the commandment? Thou shalt not kill. Our Lord said, and I just want to say one other thing I was a little disturbed by. I made it clear in my opening statement, I never raised religion one time in my opening statement. Not once. Because I wanted to stay away from it because we always get banged up. I'm using my religion. I'm using my religion. And I stayed away with it. But how many people got up at the mic today and used religion for an excuse to have an abortion? It seems to me we can't use our religion to protect life, but they can use their religious beliefs to kill life. Some religions believe in murder for adultery. If we're to accept that the other religious people have the right to their religious beliefs to do something, are we going to accept the religious beliefs of some people who think we should kill people for adultery? Do we want to be able to say, our religious belief says if you steal something, we cut off your hand? Or, Senator Taylor, we're friends, but please, just give me the courtesy to let me close. Or to poke out their eyes. We don't do that. We're not going to use those religious beliefs to pass our laws on this. These are the times that try our souls. These are difficult questions. And Senator Becker, I told her, I love you. I love everybody in this room. Everybody. Because I'm commanded to do that. Sometimes I might get upset, especially with Senator Taylor. But I still love him. We're friends. But, guys, we can't do this. Exceptions equal death for unborn, innocent children. That's what exceptions. So, I think I covered everything I need to and tried some of the things that were brought up. And I don't do this lightly. I know I'm going to be judged, and I'll be judged in an election. But I do know this. I had to go against every fiber in my body. I had to give up so much that I love and believe in to bring this amendment. But I'll tell you what, I was willing and prepared to do that because I think it's the right thing to do. And all I ask anybody here tonight to do, and especially 24 members on this side of the room, who I know where you believe and what you've fought for and what you've defended, stand up with courage and conviction and save these babies' lives. With that, I would sincerely ask for your consideration for this bill. Thank you.
A roll call has been requested and is granted. The machine is open. Machine is closed. Clerk will tie the roll. 18 ayes, 28 nays. The motion to amend has failed. Are there further amendments? Senator Young? Hey,